So it's a Twitter exchange that no crypto investor or even believer in Web3 should ignore. I'm talking when Elon Musk tweeted, "Has anyone seen Web3? I can't find it." Jack Dorsey responded, "It's somewhere between A and Z." Now, Dorsey was referring to the Silicon Valley heavyweight firm Andreessen Horowitz, who have launched a very ambitious plan to dominate the crypto world. Critics say the move by the firm and others are making a mockery of the so-called decentralized finance revolution, if you will, and dashing hopes that the public have in finding true financial freedom through the blockchain. I'm going to bring in MBTV's Naomi Brockwell on this. And Naomi, a detailed look at token allocation for public blockchain shows limits for communities, also individuals, as these insiders and foundations own so much. Would that mean that they would have this sort of de facto control? Would investors be swapping government overseers for filthy rich Silicon Valley overseers?
So I definitely don't think that public regulators are the same as Silicon Valley. One of them, you have a choice. If you don't like a token, you can dump it. You can buy into something else. So I definitely don't see those as interchangeable. They're definitely not substitutable. But I also think that there's sort of this trend at the moment to vilify VCs. And it's kind of part of this anti-wealth, anti-business narrative that's taking over and trying to now infuse itself in the blockchain world. There's nothing wrong with investing money with the hopes of profiting for it. It's not just valid, but I think it should be celebrated, actually. You know, taking risks with the hope to profit from something, that's how things get built. It's by people investing in projects either with sweat equity or with actual capital. And it's strange to single out one of those vested interests as invalid and the other as valid, as far as I'm concerned.
So when Andreessen Horowitz takes out a bunch of senators to a luncheon and then they try to get certain legislation passed and they control large swaths of any particular coin or token, you don't think that would be undue influence, and that wouldn't change. You got into this, and correct me if I'm wrong. It felt like you got into this as almost you've got this, not, I wouldn't say anti-government, but you're a free spirit. You believe government is far too big, and you saw this early, before almost anyone, years ago, as an opportunity to get away from that. Could this actually pull it back to that, though?
I mean, there are a couple of things to address there. So one of them is this idea of rent seeking, this idea of lobbyists taking out government officials. I definitely think that's something to be aware of, but you also have to take a step back and see, are these people, do they have incentives that are aligned with my own, before just wiping it all out with a brush and saying, this is bad behavior. Because the situation is currently that we have a ton of bureaucrats in office who are all deciding the fate of crypto and they don't even understand it. So if it's a choice between people who understand the industry and those who have no clue what they're talking about, I would err on the side of those who do have a clue. That being said, always have caution when people are going in and lobbying, because they can always lobby for their own vested interest. I haven't seen that from Andreessen Horowitz. There are a lot of invested players in this space who are doing tremendous work lobbying for the industry and for good things in the industry, not just for their particular company. And the other thing that you mentioned, you're talking about people who have a large stock of tokens. So there's a difference between an equity holder and someone who has governance control. These are not the same thing. And just because someone has a lot of tokens, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a controlling interest. It's the same as like a CEO of a company. They might have the most control over the company, but they don't necessarily have the most stock in the company. So it's important to differentiate. But one more thing, Charles, I'll just say that I do think that centralization is an issue. You should be aware of it. I just don't want to paint all VCs as these villains who are taking over. I think they're providing a lot of value and investment in a really interesting space.
All right, so bottom line in 30 seconds, you're still a believer. It's going to overcome any and all obstacles, and we can go ahead and say Bitcoin 1 million again, right? We can reiterate that.
Bitcoin 1 million to the moon, Charles. As I said before, Bitcoin to the moon.
Have a Merry Christmas, Naomi. Again, you were there before everyone. Congratulations, and I'm glad you always come on. That was a fantastic segment. I learned a lot. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Charles.